The day my wife told me she wanted a divorce, I was standing in our kitchen wearing paint-stained jeans and holding a sandwich I'd made from yesterday's bread. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were always my late shift at the warehouse, and I'd been trying to eat something before heading out for another 10-hour haul moving boxes that weighed more than my 7-year-old son. "I want everything, Marcus," she said, not looking up from her phone. "The house, the car, the savings account, all of it." I set the sandwich down. My hands were shaking, though I didn't know why yet. We'd been struggling for months, maybe years if I'm honest. But hearing it said out loud felt like standing on ice that had just cracked beneath my feet. "What about Eli?" I asked. That's when she looked up. Her eyes were cold in a way I'd never seen before, not even during our worst fights. "You can have him." 3 words. That's all it took to rewrite my entire understanding of the woman I'd loved since I was 23 years old. If you're listening to this story and you've ever felt like your whole world was built on sand, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to hear how this ends, because what happened next changed everything about who I thought I was and who I was about to become. My name is Marcus Webb, and before that Tuesday, I would have told you I was nobody special. I worked third shift at a distribution warehouse on the east side of town, loading trucks and unloading pallets until my back ached and my hands went numb. I'd been doing it for 9 years, ever since Eli was born, and we needed the health insurance more than we needed my pride. Before the warehouse, I'd been studying to be a teacher. I was 2 semesters away from my degree when Vanessa got pregnant. We weren't married yet, but we loved each other, or at least I loved her, and I thought that was enough for both of us. "We'll figure it out," I'd told her, holding her hand in the clinic parking lot when she showed me the positive test. "I'll work. You finish school. Then we'll switch. We'll take turns." She'd smiled at me then, really smiled, and I believed we were building something together. Eli came in January, during a snowstorm that shut down half the city. I held him in the hospital room while Vanessa slept, this tiny creature with my nose and her dark hair, and I made him a promise. I would be the kind of father who stayed, who showed up, who kept his word. I dropped out 3 weeks later and took the first job that offered benefits. Vanessa finished her nursing degree when Eli turned 2. By the time he was 4, she was working at a private medical practice downtown, making 3 times what I made moving boxes in a freezing warehouse. I was proud of her. I bragged about her to the other guys during lunch breaks, told them my wife was smart as hell and going places. I never noticed when she stopped bragging about me. The thing about struggling is that it doesn't announce itself with trumpets and warning signs. It seeps in like water through a crack in the foundation. Slow, quiet, and by the time you notice, the damage is already structural. Vanessa started working later. Then later still. She'd come home after Eli was already asleep, smelling like expensive hand soap and restaurant wine, and she'd go straight to the bedroom without saying much beyond long day or exhausted. I'd already fed Eli dinner, usually mac and cheese or chicken nuggets, whatever I could afford on my grocery budget. I'd already helped him with his homework, read him a story, tucked him in. I'd already cleaned the kitchen and started a load of laundry and paid what bills I could. When she finally came to bed, I'd try to talk to her. "How was work?" "Fine. Eli's teacher said he's reading above grade level now." "That's good. I was thinking maybe this weekend we could." "Marcus, I'm tired. Can we not do this right now?" So I stopped trying. I told myself she was stressed. She was climbing the ladder at work, getting promoted, being taken seriously in a field that didn't always take women seriously. I told myself I should be supportive, not needy. But loneliness is a specific kind of cold, and it was settling into our house like winter fog. Eli started asking questions. "Why doesn't Mom play with me anymore?" "She's busy, buddy. She works really hard." "Don't you work hard too?" I didn't have a good answer for that. The truth was I did work hard. I worked my body into exhaustion 5 nights a week, came home smelling like cardboard and diesel, and then I worked again, cooking, cleaning, parenting, being present. But somehow my kind of hard work had become invisible. It didn't come with a paycheck that impressed anyone. It didn't come with a title or an office or respect. It just came with another day of the same. I started noticing other things too. Vanessa's phone was always face down on the table. She changed her passwords. She started going to conferences, on weekends, leaving me alone with Eli for days at a time. I could have confronted her. Maybe I should have. But I was terrified of what I'd find, and even more terrified of what it would mean for Eli if our family fell apart. So I stayed quiet. I endured. I told myself that was strength. The divorce papers arrived on a Friday. I found them tucked inside a manila envelope that had been left on the kitchen counter, right next to Eli's math homework and a half-empty juice box. No conversation. No warning. Just legal documents outlining exactly how Vanessa intended to dismantle our lives. She wanted the house. We'd bought it together with her signing bonus from the medical practice, but her name was on the mortgage because my credit wasn't good enough after years of barely scraping by. She wanted the car, a used SUV we'd purchased 2 years ago when my truck finally died. She wanted the savings account, all $4,200 of it that I'd been putting $50 into every month for the last 3 years, even when it meant skipping lunch at work. She wanted everything we'd built, everything we'd struggled for. Except our son. In the section marked child custody, her lawyer had typed, Father granted full physical and legal custody. Mother requests visitation as schedules permit. As schedules permit. Like he was a dentist appointment she might get around to if she wasn't too busy. I sat at that kitchen table for 2 hours, reading those papers over and over, trying to understand how the woman who'd once held my hand through a pregnancy scare, who'd cried in my arms when her father died, who'd promised to build a life with me, how that woman had become someone who could give away her own child like he was a piece of furniture she didn't have room for anymore. When Eli came home from school that afternoon, I was still sitting there. "Dad, are you okay?" I looked up at my son, 7 years old, missing his 2 front teeth, wearing a Pokemon shirt I'd found at Goodwill, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to let him see me fall apart. "I'm good, buddy," I said, folding the papers and sliding them back into the envelope. "You hungry? I'll make us some grilled cheese." He grinned at me, gap-toothed and trusting, and I felt something harden in my chest. Not anger, exactly. Something colder and more permanent. Survival instinct. The divorce was finalized in 6 weeks. Vanessa got the house. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a complex where the parking lot was always full of broken-down cars, and the walls were thin enough to hear every argument from the neighbors on both sides. The rent was $950 a month, which was most of my paycheck after taxes. She got the car. I bought a 15-year-old Honda Civic with 190,000 miles on it from a guy who worked maintenance at the warehouse. It rattled when I went over 40, and the AC didn't work, but it ran. She got the savings account. I opened a new one and started over with $37. I got Eli. And for reasons I didn't understand at the time, she looked relieved about it. If you've ever had to start over from nothing while taking care of someone who depends on you completely, you know what the next 2 years of my life looked like. And if this story is hitting close to home, leave a comment below and let me know. I read every single one, and knowing I'm not alone in this keeps me going. Don't forget to subscribe, because what comes next is when everything started to shift. The apartment became home slowly, the way scar tissue becomes part of your skin. Eli got the bigger bedroom. I bought him a bed frame from Facebook Marketplace and a desk from a garage sale, painted them both blue because that was his favorite color. I put glow-in-the-dark stars on his ceiling and hung his drawings on the fridge with magnets I'd saved from pizza deliveries. My room barely fit a mattress on the floor and a plastic dresser from Target, but I didn't care. I wasn't trying to impress anyone anymore. Money was impossibly tight. After rent, utilities, groceries, and gas for the dying Civic, I usually had about $60 left until the next paycheck. I started picking up extra shifts whenever I could, which meant Eli spent a lot of evenings at the apartment of Mrs. Chen, an elderly woman who lived downstairs and had grandchildren she never got to see. "Don't you worry about paying me," she'd tell me whenever I tried to offer her something. "That boy's good company. He helps me with my crossword puzzles." There were people like that, small mercies that kept us afloat when I thought we might drown. The school counselor who made sure Eli got free lunch. The warehouse supervisor who looked the other way when I needed to leave early for parent-teacher conferences. The food bank volunteer who never made me feel ashamed when I showed up on the first Saturday of every month. I learned to swallow my pride and accept help. Not because I wanted to, but because Eli needed to eat. Vanessa saw Eli exactly 4 times in those 2 years. The first time was his 8th birthday. She showed up 3 hours late to the park where I'd planned a small party with a few kids from his class. She brought an expensive present, a video game console I could never afford, and stayed for 20 minutes before claiming she had a work emergency. Eli cried himself to sleep that night. The second time was Christmas. She took him to her new apartment, a luxury high-rise downtown with a doorman and marble floors, and bought him everything he asked for. When she dropped him off that evening, he was quiet in a way that scared me. "Did you have fun?" I asked. "Her new boyfriend was there," he said softly. "He's really tall. He has a nice watch." I felt something crack inside my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "Did they treat you good?" "Yeah. They took me to a fancy restaurant. I didn't know which fork to use." I pulled him into a hug and held on tighter than I probably should have. The third time was for his school play. I'd been practicing lines with him for weeks, helping him memorize his part as the third shepherd in the nativity scene. Vanessa texted me that she'd be there, so I saved her a seat in the auditorium. She never showed up. After the play, I took Eli to get ice cream, even though it wasn't in my budget. He got 2 scoops of chocolate, and I got nothing, just watched him eat and tried to fill the space where his mother should have been with my presence, my attention, my steady reliability. "I didn't think she'd come anyway," he said quietly, not looking at me. That hurt worse than if he'd cried. The 4th time was the last time. She called me on a Tuesday, always Tuesday with her, and asked if she could take Eli for the weekend. She sounded different. Tired, maybe. Or guilty. "I want to do better," she said. "I want to be more present." I wanted to believe her. For Eli's sake, I wanted so badly to believe her. "Okay," I said. "He'd like that." She picked him up Friday after school. I packed his bag carefully, made sure he had his allergy medication and his favorite stuffed animal and the book he was reading. I reminded Vanessa about his bedtime routine, how he liked the nightlight on and the door cracked open, how he sometimes had nightmares and needed someone to sit with him until he fell back asleep. She barely listened. She was looking at her phone. Eli hugged me goodbye, and I told him I loved him, and then I watched them drive away in her expensive new car with the boyfriend in the passenger seat. She brought him back Sunday evening, 2 hours earlier than planned. He was homesick, she said at my door, like it was an accusation. He cried for you all night Saturday. Eli rushed past her into the apartment, and I could see he'd been crying recently. His eyes were red and puffy. Vanessa looked at me with something like resentment. I don't know why he's so attached to you, she said. I'm his mother. I stared at her. This woman I'd loved, this woman I'd built a life with, this woman who'd walked away from the most important person in both our worlds. Being a mother isn't about biology, I said quietly. It's about showing up. She left without another word. That was 8 months ago. She hasn't asked to see him since. Time does something strange when you're focused on survival. Days blur together into weeks, weeks into months, and before you know it, you've lived an entire year in a mode you thought was temporary. But somewhere in that blur, I started changing. Not in the ways you'd expect. I didn't get rich. I didn't get promoted or find some miracle career opportunity. I was still working third shift at the warehouse, still driving the rattling Civic, still stretching groceries across 2 weeks and buying Eli's clothes from thrift stores. But I got stronger in ways that mattered more. I learned to cook real meals, not just boxed mac and cheese, but actual food with vegetables and protein and effort. I watched YouTube videos about budget cooking and discovered I was pretty decent at it. Eli started requesting my spaghetti and meatballs over fast food. I learned to help with homework I didn't always understand, sitting at our small kitchen table with Eli for hours, working through math problems and book reports. When I couldn't figure something out, we'd figure it out together, and I realized I was teaching him something more valuable than the right answers. I was teaching him that not knowing something wasn't shameful, that asking for help was smart, that trying hard mattered more than being perfect. I learned to show up. To every school event, every parent-teacher conference, every game and concert and science fair. I was the dad in the bleachers who worked night shift and showed up anyway with dark circles under my eyes, cheering louder than anyone. And slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice, Eli started to thrive. His grades improved. He made friends. He joined soccer even though we couldn't afford the fancy cleats, and his coach loaned us a used pair that fit just right. He learned to ride a bike on a secondhand one I'd found at a yard sale and fixed up myself. And the day he finally got it without training wheels, he looked at me with such pure joy that I felt like the richest man alive. But more than any of that, he felt safe. I could see it in the way he'd talk to me about his day without holding anything back. The way he'd tell me when something scared him or confused him or hurt his feelings. The way he'd wake up from a nightmare and call out Dad, knowing I'd be there in seconds. Trust isn't something you can buy or demand. You build it one kept promise at a time, one moment of presence at a time, one choice to stay at a time. I'd spent 2 years building something stronger than the life Vanessa had wanted to take from me. I'd built a foundation that couldn't be taken away. Mrs. Chen died on a Sunday morning in April. Eli found out first. He'd gone downstairs to show her a picture he'd drawn, a family portrait with just the two of us and her, holding her crossword puzzle, and found her super standing outside her apartment with paramedics. He came back upstairs crying, and I held him while he sobbed into my shoulder. She was my friend, he kept saying. She was my friend. We went to her funeral the following Saturday. It was small, just a handful of people from the building and a nephew who'd flown in from California. The nephew thanked everyone for coming and apologized that he hadn't visited more often, and I felt a deep sadness for Mrs. Chen, who'd been so kind to us and had died mostly alone. After the service, the nephew approached me. You're Marcus, right? The guy from upstairs. Yes, sir. My aunt talked about you and your son a lot in our phone calls. She said you were good people. He paused, looking uncomfortable. She left something for you. In her will. I wasn't expecting that. Sir, that's not necessary. It's already done. Her lawyer will contact you, but I wanted to tell you in person. He handed me a business card. She wanted you to have her savings. Said you'd use it better than anyone. I stared at the card, not understanding. How much? I started but couldn't finish. $38,000, he said softly. She lived simply. Saved everything. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not even Eli, though he knew something had changed because I kept crying at random moments, washing dishes, driving to work, lying in bed at night. I cried because Mrs. Chen had seen me. Really seen me. Not as a failure or a charity case or someone to pity, but as someone trying hard to do right by his kid. And she'd decided that mattered. For the first time in 3 years, I had choices. I could get us into a better apartment. I could buy Eli new clothes instead of thrift store finds. I could fix the Civic, or maybe even buy something more reliable. I could put money away for his future, for college or trade school, or whatever he wanted. I could stop living paycheck to paycheck, stop choosing between groceries and gas, stop lying awake at night doing math in my head about bills I wasn't sure I could cover. But more than any of that, I had proof that the way I'd chosen to live, with integrity, with presence, with love, meant something to someone. Mrs. Chen's gift wasn't just money. It was validation. The phone call came on a Tuesday night in September. Of course it did. I was making dinner, my now famous spaghetti and meatballs, while Eli did homework at the kitchen table. My phone buzzed, and I almost didn't answer when I saw the name. Vanessa. But something made me pick up. Maybe intuition. Maybe fate. Marcus. Her voice was different. Strained. What do you need, Vanessa? I need to talk to you. In person. It's important. I looked at Eli, who was watching me with those perceptive eyes that missed nothing. This isn't a good time. Please. And then quieter. I'm in trouble. We met at a coffee shop downtown 3 days later. I'd arranged for Eli to stay with one of his friend's parents, a couple who'd become friends of mine through school events. They were good people who understood what it meant to co-parent through hard times. Vanessa was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table. She looked different. Older, somehow, though it had only been 8 months. There were lines around her eyes I didn't remember, and her hands were shaking slightly as she wrapped them around her coffee cup. Thanks for coming, she said when I sat down. I didn't respond. Just waited. I made mistakes, she started. A lot of mistakes. Is that what this is? An apology tour? No. Yes. I don't know. She closed her eyes. The boyfriend I was seeing, Richard, he's gone, took a job in Seattle and didn't ask me to come. The promotion I was working toward fell through. They hired someone younger, cheaper. And my mother, her voice cracked. My mother's sick. Stage 4 lung cancer. She needs someone to take care of her, and I'm all she has. I felt a distant sympathy, the kind you feel for strangers on the news. I'm sorry about your mom, I said carefully. But I don't understand why you're telling me this. She looked up at me, and her eyes were desperate in a way I recognized. I'd seen that desperation in the mirror for years. I need help, Marcus. Financial help. I used everything I had to buy the condo, and now I can't afford it. I'm drowning in debt. Credit cards, medical bills for my mom, everything. And I know you got money from Mrs. Chen. Eli mentioned it last time I called him. There it was. My stomach went cold. You want the inheritance. Not all of it. Just enough to get stable. To help my mother. You still have your job, you have. I have Eli. My voice was harder than I intended. I have our son, who you gave away like he was a burden, who you've seen 4 times in 2 years, who cries on his birthday because his mother doesn't show up. That's not fair. What's not fair is you calling me now because you need something. What's not fair is you treating our son like an option when he should have been your priority. What's not fair is you asking me to bail you out after you took everything from me and called it a divorce. We were attracting attention. I lowered my voice. I'm sorry about your mother. Truly. But that money isn't mine to give you. It's Eli's future. His college fund. His security. The thing I'm building, so he never has to struggle the way I did. Vanessa's face hardened. So you're going to let my mother suffer? You're that petty. I'm that protective, I corrected. There's a difference. If you're still with me, this is where everything comes together. This is the moment I've been building toward. Drop a like if you're feeling this, because what I'm about to tell you changed everything about how I see justice, revenge, and what it means to be the bigger person. She tried a different approach. What about custody then? Maybe we should revisit the arrangement. I could take Eli more often, give you a break. We could split time 50-50. My blood went cold. You haven't seen him in 8 months. I've been busy. You've been absent. And now you want custody because you think it'll change my mind about the money. She didn't deny it. Her silence was confirmation enough. Let me be very clear, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. You will not use our son as a negotiation tool. You gave up custody because you didn't want the responsibility. You don't get to reclaim it now because it serves your purposes. I'm his mother. You're a woman who gave birth to him. Being a mother is something you earn every single day by showing up, by sacrificing, by putting someone else's needs before your own. I've been his mother and his father for 2 years. You've been a stranger who sends expensive presents to quiet her guilt. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. You're going to regret this. My lawyer will be in touch about the custody modification. Let him call, I said calmly. I've got 2 years of school records showing me at every conference. Photos from every event. Testimony from teachers, coaches, neighbors, Eli's therapist. You want to go to court? We'll go to court. And every person who matters in Eli's life will tell the judge the same story. I'm the one who stayed. She stared at me, and for a moment I saw something flicker across her face. Not anger. Something more like recognition. Like she was seeing me for the first time as something other than the man she'd left behind. You've changed, she said quietly. No, I replied. I just stopped pretending to be smaller than I am to make you feel bigger. She left the coffee shop, and I sat there for another 20 minutes, my untouched coffee growing cold in front of me. I could have given her some of the money. Not all of it, but enough to help with her mother's care. It would have been the generous thing, the compassionate thing. Some people might say it would have been the right thing. But I thought about Eli. I thought about the night he'd cried himself to sleep after his 8th birthday party, waiting for a mother who showed up late and left early. I thought about the school play she'd missed, the weekend she'd cut short because he was homesick, the 8 months of silence that followed. I thought about every dinner I'd cooked, every nightmare I'd comforted, every homework struggle we'd worked through together, every small moment of presence that had built the trust between us. And I thought about the woman who'd wanted everything in the divorce except the most important thing. Some people don't deserve second chances. Not because they're evil, but because giving them another opportunity to hurt someone you love is its own form of cruelty. My job wasn't to save Vanessa. My job was to protect Eli. Subscribe for part 2.